Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Ebola Hunter and an Ushuaia Project titled Silurian to Devonian Terrestrial Revolution off of the Diversification of Life album. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen. Here's the art here for this. It's the 10th track on this album. There's quite a lot of songs involved. It's a 2-hour album, which is a great effort, genuinely. Like these days and age, it's very rare to get an album that is at that 2-hour mark. So there's a lot of material on here. And we're going to listen through this 10th track from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, what do we got? I do like how those synths come together with those sequences in the background. I mean, I think the modulations are satisfying. Just the overall quad note groove with those kicks and snares, the way they're filtered as well is kind of neat. I mean, this pattern remains fresh. And there's an interesting resonance to that synth lead there. Like it kind of pushes against your headphones a little bit, but it still doesn't overwhelm it. we've effectively become higher in pitch with a lot of these elements over time and potentially less filtered, haven't we? What I liked about that ending part there, with just those bubbles, that sound there going into the age of the fishes, you can kind of understand, oh, okay, the fish are here now, there are the bubbles of the ocean. I kind of get the impression with this that this is more sort of referring, this album is referring in general to the way that the animals developed over the years they did, you know. We're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Ebola Hunter and the Ushuaia Project, titled Silurian to Devonian Terrestrial Revolution, off of the Diversification of Life album. Now, I'm actually going to switch back because I've actually had a quick look into this just so that I don't sound completely uneducated. And we see here the Silurian Devonian Terrestrial Revolution, also known as the Devonian Plant Explosion, and the Devonian Explosion was a period of rapid colonization, diversification, and radiation of land plants and fungi on dry lands that occurred 428 to 355 million years ago during the Silurian and Devonian periods, with the most critical phase occurring during the late Silurian and early Devonian. That's crazy. That's fantastic. So basically, I think if we switch back, I think that this track is trying to sound like you'd maybe imagine the plants and the fungi kind of taking over the land. And I think that that's an incredibly unique thing to make a song about. I, in my time reviewing music, have not heard music about something like this. I haven't heard music that represents this, and I feel like it's so refreshing to have a different take. Maybe there is a lot of music about stuff like this, I just haven't heard it yet, but I am genuinely grateful for having the opportunity to be able to do so, because I just think it's nice to have something different. I get the impression that this album is talking about all these different events in real time as the Earth developed, and I feel like you could genuinely learn things. I feel like this is meant to be more of a sort of like more a scientific method to it, like more of a serious approach to creating music that sounds like it. But I nonetheless feel as if music is one of the ways to kind of branch out and sort of, you could imagine this music being used in like a David Attenborough kind of documentary or something like that too. You could imagine little mushrooms and the plants kind of growing all over the place. And I feel like it would be a great album to just listen through in terms of being able to process maybe information or study you're doing on these things alongside it. It is an instrumental track. There are no vocals, and I think that's fine. You could have potentially have had vocals to go over top of this, but I feel as if it would have potentially maybe just kind of been unnecessary. There's a time and place for storytelling, and I think if you're specifically trying to create an environment where you have that music there and it like you don't need to over explain it. It's just enough for us to sort of be able to sit there, and if you understand what the Silurian to Devonian Terrestrial Revolution is, you can kind of imagine how that information works in the context of the track. And the track itself is not super complicated in the sense that there are a few core components that individually do quite a bit, but like in the sense that like it's also very sort of easy to digest, because there's things, for example, like that consistency of that quarter note groove with the kick, snare, and the way it's filtered. It's not super intense and in your face. It's not meant to be bombastic. It's simply a drum groove that almost sounds like time ticking. Kick, snare, kick, kind of things keep moving forward, almost like it is the march of those plants and the fungi and stuff like that going over the plains. The dominant source of melody and harmony within this track are the pads, the leads, and the sequences. The sequences, or like the arpeggios, kind of working between these different triads, arpeggiating and moving between different minors, going up and down in pitch. And I think we may have started lower, or at least a bit more subtly in regards to how they sounded. And near the end, almost like we were attaining sort of sentience or an elevation that is greater than we had before, the pitch of those, I think, if I'm not mistaken, rose as well. And I thought that was really cool because you can kind of imagine things getting bigger and more clear and there being a bit more sort of permeance to it. And yeah, I feel as if it was just interesting to specifically work with only minors there. It makes it a bit more sort of mysterious and fantasy-like. You know, it kind of sounds like it could be like a sci-fi soundtrack or something you'd hear in like one of those kind of like more kind of role-play RPG games, and I adore that a lot. I think the occasional pads that you had on the sides there, they offered a bit of color and glow to the piece, which behaved very well alongside those sequences without overindulging them. And there was this interesting sort of more intense sort of lead that kind of pushed forward. You can kind of almost imagine that the plants coming out of the ground and trying to sort of reach the top. And there's stuff here which I feel like is trying to illustrate or help you to further imagine what these things are doing that they're describing. And it's more than just creating a composition with melodies and harmonies and rhythms and stuff like that. It's meant to be sort of more, I suppose, maybe unintentionally or like intentionally an interactive experience. Like it's very vivid. So I feel as if this is simply a song where thematically it's more oriented towards trying to get you in that space where you're sort of almost meditating on the concept that it is trying to describe. You kind of sit there, and then the consistency of it, even if it slightly builds in pitch over time, it becomes a bit brighter overall. It's there to sort of, again, maybe be like I think it could work as like a study material alongside this kind of thing, or you could kind of imagine, if you close your eyes, the plants growing all over the place. And I don't really know what else to say about it. It's an effective track. It's well written. It follows the fundamentals of music theory and composition. It's also a piece where I think that if I say more than that, I'm simply going to sort of be stumbling over my own words because I don't sure what else to say. It's just kind of special. And I think it's very rare for a 5-minute track to be engaging throughout, but it's almost like you're simultaneously enjoying knowing that there might not be a change, whilst also appreciating the little nuances. It's a very soothing, calming experience. And the studio production, you know, the recording, mixing, mastering, etc., is very well handled. I feel like the individual elements within the mix were well captured. You can hear everything clearly. When things do push through or get a little bit sort of like kind of rigid against the limiter ceiling there, I feel like it's never too much. There's dynamic range to it. No weird resonant frequencies. Music surrounds you in the headphones. It's a really well made track, and it gives me faith on this first impression that the rest of this album, even if it might not necessarily be a style of music that there is a lot of, or that a lot of us may necessarily be familiar with. It's simply as sort of maybe more of a sort of a experimental kind of instrumental kind of piece. It's incredibly effective, and I'm really glad it exists, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to listen through it. So thank you very much for watching my review of this track from an act named Ebola Hunter in the Ushuaia Project, titled The Diversification of Life, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all this crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.